An old friend of mine, author Michael Wallis, says a catalog of common people is as seductive as Grandma's peanut brittle. And he does it in a voice much deeper than mine. I can't get that low. Mark Darrah is here again. Mark, last time you were here, we didn't have a lot of time to talk together, and we're going to try and correct that today to get some points in on your book.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's go back again. I want to cover a little bit of ground we've already covered. What prompted you to write this?
Well, in Christmas time, 1997, my wife and I didn't know what to buy my brother or sister or parents for Christmas, and we decided that we wanted to do something different. One of the reasons why we had problems buying things for my family members was that we didn't really know them. So we figured they probably didn't know us very well either. So we put together a series of vignettes, and our friend Frank Crystal at KWGS at the University of Tulsa recorded these. So we made a cassette tape of these stories.
About the family.
About the family.
What a thoughtful gift.
And Frank said, you know, I'm going to give this cassette to Rich Fisher, who is the host of Studio Tulsa, and he said, I'd like to see if he's interested in broadcasting these. And so he was, and I got a fan letter, I got calls, and I thought, well, that's nice. Well, back in those days, there was not a lot that you could do with just short, true stories about real people. So I would write these and mail these out to friends and family, and I ended up doing commentary on Studio Tulsa, still do from time to time. And I would write these short stories about real people and just mail them to my friends and family. And at one point I decided, gee, I have enough for a book. And publisher out of Texas agreed to publish the book. Like you said, it's called A Catalogue of Common People. And these were written over a period of about 20 years. 15 or 20 years.
Well, I think what you've done and what you're doing is a marvelous concept. Rich Fisher, by the way, is probably the best interviewer I have ever heard.
He does a good job,
bar none. The guy's a master.
He does a very good job, but you do a very good job too.
You just want me to polish your shoes. I know what you're after. I've asked you to read a segment, which you're going to do here in just a couple of minutes. One of the things that comes screaming out of this booklet is that you and I, and I'm assuming everybody watching, all share a common bond.
That's correct.
Everybody's family is full of stories.
That's correct.
Mine's no exception. And as I finished yours, I went back and read it a second time, I was struck by the fact that we had everybody. We had school teachers, we had truck drivers, we had ice plant workers, we had bankers, we had politicians. They're all in there. They're all in there. You and I share that common thread.
Yes.
The difference is you're keeping yours alive, which I greatly admire. Would you read the passage I've asked you to go through?
Sure. When I wrote a family history for a college class in the 1970s, I asked my living grandmothers and grandfather this question: what was the most significant event of your lifetime? Each answered World War I. Each thought this war had forever corrupted the morals of this country. My brother, sister, and I these days go through family heirlooms accumulated by my parents and their parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Many were Masons and members of the Eastern Star. All were devout white Protestant Oklahoma Christians. I wonder how close I get to touching the robes of the Ku Klux Klan.
May I have the book a minute?
Yes.
There is another line in here I want to add to this. Let's see. I remember a discussion I had with my grandfather during the latter years of his life. He'd come of age in the 20s and had political ambitions, just like his father. By the time of our talk, Grandpa had suffered a stroke. He didn't get animated much anymore, but when I asked him whether he had any dealings with the KKK, he lurched forward and said they were all a bunch of cowards. They tried to get me to join. I told them I wouldn't have anything to do with them. Clear distinction was made at that point in our history and all over the country, join or not to join. Every family was touched. Everybody knew. You had night riders, you had Klansmen.
Yes.
And they were in charge of a lot of things in this country.
That's right. And there were two periods of our history where the Klan had many members. The first was post-Civil War, and it was largely a Southern organization, and it was remembering the Old South and that type of thing. But there was a second rising of the KKK, and this coincided with the end of World War I. And it was more centered in the Midwest, and surprisingly, there were quite a few members in the far West. And this organization was not driven exclusively by racial animus, but the second version of the KKK was interested in being enforcers of morals.
Morals police.
Yeah. You know, they would take maybe someone who was a bootlegger out and tie him to a tree and beat him, or someone who would have children but not marry the mothers and they would castrate them. You know, people who didn't work, didn't support their family. That was what they did.
There were generations, and there are generations out there now that have no idea what it was like during that period. You also write, and bear with me here because this speaks to the teachers in our families, yours and mine. Mm-hmm. And I love this. The wonderful thing about learning is you deprive no one else by taking what you learn. The wonderful thing about teaching is that you don't lose what you give away. Teaching is also the only gift you can give that will live on into eternity. Something you teach becomes another's who teaches it to another, and on and on and on and on. What a great passage.
Thank you.
That's terrific stuff, man.
Thank you. Well, and we all teach each other.
We do.
Every
and there
day.
are I often think the ones that fail to recognize that or refuse to learn it, if you will, are the ones that create the most dissension in the country.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that, like I said, we all learn from each other, and we all learn from each other. I think our past is much closer than what we think it is, and our future is much closer than what we imagine.
We are a tribe.
Yes.
No matter what color.
Right.
We are all the same tribe. We're all linked.
Right. Well, with this book, the thing, everyone who has commented to me who has read this book has said, that reminds me of my story. You know, I was in the Army, and I went to California, and people thought my accent was funny, and you have the story in your book. Then I get to hear that story. And we all have stories, and they're all worth sharing, and some of them are more interesting than others, but they're all stories that we can learn from, and it's important to share those stories.
Catalogue of Common People, where's it available?
It's available at Boarding House Books here in Claremore. It's also available at Another Chapter bookstore in Owasso, and it's available at various online sellers.
Well, I hope it sells so well, you write another, and I hope they sell so well that you're in a different tax bracket the next time we talk.
Well, thank you very much, Sam.
Thanks, Mark. You're a good man.
It. Thank
I don't
you.
care what anybody says.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this edition of Perspectives. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.